You're listening to Popcorn Pals, and this episode, I'm joined by Rotten Tomatoes certified film critic Peter Gray, where we're discussing No Hard Feelings. I'm Timmy Fland's movie buff, and this is Popcorn Pals, a popcorn podcast with Leigh and Tim spin-off, where I'll be joined by a rotation of movie-loving legend guest hosts to discuss the latest and greatest new big screen releases. It's the same salty fun with some new flavors. And speaking of salty, I'm so delighted to have one of my favorite people join me for this episode, unabashed and unafraid to tell it how it is when delivering his film reviews for the AU Review and the monthly movie marathon podcast. From TIFF to Sundance and the Sydney Film Festival, please welcome Rotten Tomatoes certified film critic Peter Gray to the show.
Oh, I have never been more happy to be called salty. That's great.
I thought you would like that, my friend. Sometimes sweet, depends what day we get you.
Very true.
Thank you for joining me. I was so happy to bring you on to talk about Jennifer Lawrence's new movie, No Hard Feelings. How are you feeling about being here and talking about this one? I know we'll dive into it.
I'm very excited. I've been looking forward to this one. I've been getting sick of seeing the trailers, I'll say that much. So I'm very happy that the trailers are now done. I've seen the whole thing. I'm very excited to talk about it. The return of the big screen sex comedy, and I'm all for it.
I love that. Well, with that bit of an intro, let's get on with the show. So, in No Hard Feelings, on the brink of losing her home, Maddie finds an intriguing job listing. Helicopter parents looking for someone to bring their introverted 19-year-old son out of his shell before college. She has one summer to make him a man or die trying. No Hard Feelings is directed by Gene Stupnitsky, who brought us recently The Good Boys, which is one of my favorite comedies of the last, half a decade. The screenplay is also by Stupnitsky and John Phillips, who has brought us a screenplay for Dirty Grandpa in the past. No Hard Feelings stars Jennifer Lawrence, Andrew Barth Feldman, Matthew Broderick, Natalie Morales, Laura Benanti, and Scott MacArthur. Can we talk about how excited I was that this film marks the first time that Jennifer Lawrence has gone, quote unquote, all out comedy on us? She's been funny in some roles, thinking like American Hustle and Silver Linings Playbook. There are comedic layers to those brilliant performances, Oscar winning for Silver Linings Playbook. She's done a lot of drama. She's done a lot of action. Katniss Everdeen and that franchise. But this piqued my interest, and something I have been manifesting for so long for JLaw, if we even want to refer to her as JLaw. I don't know, it feels a bit weird. She is fucking hilarious in her everyday life, and she was born for comedy. Do you agree?
Absolutely. I think a lot of people, The Hunger Games and Silver Linings Playbook was kind of where we got introduced to Jennifer Lawrence in terms of mainstream. Obviously, she had Winter's Bone before that. Yes. But, these films showcased how incredible she is as a dramatic actress. But then you saw her in all of her interviews, and I was like, this is someone who's I don't know if she just didn't bother doing media training, but she just said what was on her mind.
She really doesn't come across as someone who was done traditional media training, right?
Yeah. And because one of the greatest stories I ever heard about her was when she did a film with Charlize Theron and Kim Basinger, really early in her career, called Burning Plan. Wasn't really a big film. Mm-hmm. She was in a teenager, and she said that she hadn't done any media training, and she was at a press conference at one of the film festivals.
Yeah.
And Kim Basinger wasn't there, and they sort of asked oh, how was it working with Kim? And Jennifer Lawrence was like, oh, didn't you guys hear? Kim died. And
what? I've not heard this story before.
Everybody lost their shit because they were like, oh my God, is Kim Basinger dead? What? And then everybody on the side was just I'm
shook.
Yeah, it was pointed at her and was finish this press conference and we are going to take you on a massive tour of what you do and don't say.
Oh my God.
To me, that's classic Lawrence. She just seems like someone who doesn't give a shit.
100%. She doesn't give a fuck. She just says it how it is. She's so dry. I love
Yeah.
her humor as a human being.
Yeah, and I think because I remember like when she won the Oscar, that was the same year as Anne Hathaway, and that was kind of the year that we all started hating Anne Hathaway a little bit, and it was kind of that really big dynamic of like Jennifer Lawrence won, and she just like took the piss out of everything. She fell when she was walking up the stairs. She laughed at herself. She was having a great time, and Anne Hathaway took it like so seriously, and it was kind of just showing you like the two different like reactions to being an Oscar winner. And yeah, as like she's dabbled in comedy in some of her roles, but this has been a long time coming for her to just embrace comedy and just like let loose.
Well, embrace comedy and let loose are two very, very accurate headlines for this movie and her performance. Because I remember watching the trailer and I was really shook and taken aback because somehow, even though I live in the land of movie news and podcasts, like I didn't really see this coming. I didn't know it was a project on the horizon. And then it was just this trailer came out and I go, hold on a minute. Oh my God, Jennifer Lawrence is doing a comedy. It seemed to come out of nowhere. And I don't know how you felt about it initially. I was actually really nervous because I thought, no, like we've been waiting and wanting and manifesting this sort of role and movie from Jennifer Lawrence for so long. What if it's shit? What if it's no good? Because the comedy genre is so hard to get right. Like it's so hard to make people laugh. Like it really is. I do not envy comedic writers because your sense of humor is very subjective. So you're trying to meet a certain audience and be broad and bring people in and give them a good time. So I was nervous, but then I convinced myself. I was like, no. Jennifer Lawrence would have seen something in this script. She wouldn't have taken unless it was a great script and there was something unique about the film. And what we get in No Hard Feelings is so refreshing because it's reminiscent of those 90s, noughties comedies that are such a rare breed these days. And I just had so much fun watching a comedy that was unapologetic, raunchy as fuck, hilarious, and downright wild at times.
It was one, I was sort of the same. Like I remember seeing set photos probably like a year or so ago where it was her in like that pink dress that she wears in the dog scene, and it was kind of just like
Shelter.
And it was kind of just like, wow, Jennifer Lawrence looks incredible, and she looks like so much. I'm not saying that she's not old, but she just looked very youthful, very young in what she was wearing. I forgot about it, and then the Sony have released their R-rated trailer for No Hard Feelings, and I was like, oh, okay. And I watched it, and I thought the trailer was hilarious. I was optimistic, but I was the same as you. I was like, yeah, this could go either way because it's sort of been a while since we've had one of these type of comedies that hasn't gone to streaming. Because I feel like comedy is now, they're pushing it onto streaming. We're not really getting it in cinemas. But that was the same thing. I was like, well, Jennifer Lawrence wouldn't be saying yes to this if there wasn't something about it. And then Gene Stupnitsky, having done Good Boys, he also wrote Bad Teacher, which I think is hilarious.
That's right. Yeah, see, I didn't love Bad Teacher.
Okay. But yeah, I was like, I'm going to persevere with this. I feel I'm in good hands with this. So watch the film, and I think we can both say that our worries were eased.
We're definitely eased. Something I really admired about the movie is that it pushes the limits. And I think that's often missing in comedy. Everyone dances a little bit on eggshells because we're a bit too concerned about offending people. And in an interview with Sky News, Jennifer Lawrence has said, I think it's time for a good old-fashioned laugh, and it really is hard to make a comedy where you're not offending people. And she finishes by saying everybody will be offended by this film. So like she was managing expectations, just being like, take it or leave it. We've made a mildly offensive movie depending on where you're coming from, and we're not apologizing for it. And I really admire that about the filmmakers and her sort of approach to the role and taking this on and being like, yep, this is what you're going to get, and I'm giving it my all.
Yeah, and I think I can see why some people would find this offensive, but at the same time, it was so much sweeter than I thought it was going to be. I think the first half leans more into that raunchy, offensive, the kind of humor that you might sort of just go, oh, should I be laughing at this? Like, and then the last half is more the emotional side of things, because obviously the way that her relationship with Percy kind of ebbs and flows, and they sort of realize that there's real people underneath this sort of ridiculous premise that the film wants us to sort of go along with. And because it really leans into it, we just go, you know what, I'm going to go along with it, because I would have gone along with it for a movie in the 80s and the 90s and the 2000s, so why not go along with it now? And I sort of think maybe the one scene that people might feel a bit uneasy about is obviously the beach scene, which had the biggest reaction in the cinema. I lost my shit.
It's hysterical.
I was not expecting a lot of what happened, but I was like, there is an actress who has gotten rid of all of her vanity, which is what you need for comedy. You can't be precious in comedy. You can't have an ego. And I was like, this is what you want to see. This is Jennifer Lawrence going all out in a scene that could go down as one of those like classic comedy scenes, I think.
Oh, I completely agree. Fuck me. When that scene started playing out, and you blink and it's there. It's all there happening in front of you, and it's wild. You have to decide what you're going to do in a split second. Do I keep watching and laughing through this, or do I look away and feel really uncomfortable, or do you just embrace it? And I just went with the embrace of what was happening. And I'm so glad I did, because I just want to echo your sentiment that it 100% will go down as an iconic scene in cinema, let alone the comedy genre. Like, it is so unexpected. It's so fucking funny and wild. And to think that you have like this huge Hollywood star in Jennifer Lawrence just being like, yep, this is what I'm going to do and deal with it. And I was like, fuck yeah.
Because going into the film, I kept hearing there was like, oh, there's one scene that's going to break the internet, and it's a scene that is reminiscent of Eastern Promises. And I was like, Eastern Promises, the Cronenberg movie where there was a fight in a bathhouse.
What a comparison.
And I went, oh, okay. And then you see this scene and you just go, I get it. Yeah. It's a naked fight scene where she like WWE, like all these moves that it's wild. And I think that sort of shows you this film's mentality of like, we know the joke and we're always going to push it to the next level without also going too overboard. Because as much as that scene is wild and unexpected, and some people might find it a bit too crass, because sort of thinking like, oh, well, how could Jennifer Lawrence like, do a scene like this? I was like, she's owning it.
Yeah.
And it has a weird sort of sweetness to it, which I think a lot of the movie does, because she's doing it. Yeah. She's doing it for the right reasons. She's like,
that's right.
They stole my shit. I'm going to get it back, and I'm going to get it back in this sort of way. And I really hope everybody that listens to this is like, what actually happens in the scene? I was like, we're not going to tell you straight up. You're going to have to see this movie, because I want people to go to the cinemas and see this glorious, like, R-rated. It's not R-rated, but that mentality of comedy where it's risky and raunchy, and you see things that you're not expecting.
You didn't necessarily sign up for. Let's just say that. Let's talk about the comedy, the tone of the comedy a little bit more, because I don't know what I was expecting, but I wasn't really expecting the layers of physical comedy and slapstick that are involved in here. And I was lapping it up. Of course, like that beach scene is something that is nothing else is really like it, but it's shocking. Yes. But they were kind of teasing that the movie was going to play in that sort of space where a lot of the comedy isn't just verbal and that witty, sharp tongue that the character of Maddie has, but also that they show some shit, and it's quite funny. I was beside myself when she was dragging the chair over to the desk at the dog shelter, and then she looked like a little kindergarten kid. Just, you see the head above the desk, and I'm like, why is this so funny? And it's just how the scene is blocked, how she performs it, and then obviously married with what her motivations are in that scene as well. It's just the perfect setup for just some dumb, silly visual gags that I just adore.
No, I'm the same. Like, that really got me. And there was also like, it's just also like her walking up the steps in the rollerblades, and she's like, do you guys want to come down here? And they're like, no, you come up here. And she's like, okay. And they just watch her awkwardly go up the stairs. It was great. And she has this uncanny ability to make what could be a very sort of throwaway line really land. Like when she's talking to the parents, Matthew Broderick and Laura Benanti, who are both incredible in this film with like sort of what they do.
Yeah, they're great.
And they say, oh, he's going to Princeton. And she says, I've heard of it. And it shouldn't be as funny as it is. But it's just the fact that she's like, I've heard of Princeton, which is like, yeah, everybody's heard of Princeton. But she sort of plays it off very like, well, I'm one of the people that know about it. Those little lines to me like are just as good as when it's like the really broad comedy. And like when she goes into the dog shelter and she's like, I want to adopt a dog. And he's like, which one? She's like, which one's the most fucked up? And it's like, and he's like, you're the kind of person that we don't give dog. He's like, I would take a dog away from you, which also made me think Andrew Barth Feldman, he like knocks it back just as much as she's giving it. Like this film wouldn't work without him, because he's going toe to toe with someone who, I mean, she is like, we can say she's like a comedy powerhouse in this.
100%.
And he's like up for the challenge, and his role's not easy. His character could have been kind of insufferable in other hands, I think. He's awkward and he's nerdy and he should be a lot more advanced for what he is. But I think the fact that he also kind of embraces her craziness and he's like, I'm kind of oddly turned on by you. I don't know why.
I mean, and you see it, he just didn't know what the hell was going on. But for him, like he's such a sheltered, naive kid. Like he's not a bumbling idiot nerd. He's quite sincere. Yes, he's a bit ignorant and naive, but he was more worldly than you first give him credit for in terms of his ability to create connections with people, because his parents make it out like that he's this hopeless kid. And in some ways he is, and their intentions are nice as well. I mean, it's comedy. Everything is heightened. Everything the parents do, even through best intentions, are actually kind of fucked. You know, they track his phone and they put an ad on Craigslist to try and get someone to fuck their son. So they feel like, oh, that's what needs to happen in order for him to be ready for college. I mean, come on. It's just ridiculous. But you just go along with it.
Yeah, and then you realize he can clearly have sex on his own, because you see later on that he's formed a connection with one of the girls at his school, and she's happy that he's going to Princeton as well. And he seems like he's able to quite easily talk to people, even though he's probably like he's obviously an introvert, but he's you give him more credit than the parents do. And that's, you said, the parents think they're doing the right thing. They're just going about it in completely the wrong way. Like they know his passcode, and then he's like, you can't know my passcode, I'm changing it. And their first reaction is to go, well, what are you changing it to? And it's like,
what is it?
That's the whole thing. I'm not telling you what it is. Yeah.
But just around like his sincere, not only performance, but character, like this movie, you alluded to before, this movie has a lot of heart. And I think that's really important to call out from a story perspective, because yes, we've spent a lot of time talking about the comedy, the physical comedy, the slapstick, one particular beach scene, maybe also something involving the finger traps, which were used in creative and interesting ways.
Yeah, that was a nice payoff towards the end.
It wasn't bad, was it?
I was also like, I don't know if I'd want it to fit in there for starters, but anyway.
Yeah, look, I think I'll just happily watch from afar with that. I'm not curious to give that a go, let's just say. Anyway, of course, you don't know what we're talking about.
Not at all.
You will once you see the film. Not at all. But when he's sharing like his past experiences of bullying, it was really devastating, so utterly devastating. There'll be kids or adults like who have suffered at the hands of bullying, and that can be triggering or really can resonate with people. And the fact that you empathize with him, with the guy, and it's that particular scene, I think you can recall the moment I'm talking about, is so beautifully written, but then of course performed. And you don't nail a piece of script like that unless you have actors that work together in a scene so well as Jennifer Lawrence and Andrew Barth Feldman. The chemistry between them is undeniable. And this movie really, like, the funny is there, the story is there, but unless you had the right people saying those words and living out their lives, then it wasn't going to work. It wasn't going to hit the marks that this movie does if you didn't have those two players working with and against each other at times too. So yeah, I mean, their chemistry was really, really kind of special.
Yeah, and I think because, I mean, obviously these types of films, like, we know that it'll eventually hit an emotional snag, and we know that she's met him under a very specific circumstance, but we know that unfortunately it'll be found out as to just why she's sort of pursued him. And that scene in itself is heartbreaking, but it's it's even more so because he shares those stories, and it's sort of like when you see her going, this is now transcending sex. Like she's like, I actually like hanging out with this kid. And then, the friends are kind of like, why are you still like hanging out with him? She's like, he's really sweet. And it's true. But like you see them and it's like, it actually works. Like you sort of see them together and you think, like there's an obvious age difference because he's so baby faced. Them together, as you said, like it completely works, and you completely believe that this is a friendship above everything else. Like, yes, she wanted to initially have sex with him purely to get the car that the parents promised her.
Sure.
And then he sort of starts to want to have sex with her because he thinks that's what she wants. And he's like, I've got to be a man. And how they both sort of come to this agreement of like, we'll take it however this goes. And then there becomes this sort of genuine like love story. And for a film that's marketing itself as this sort of raunchy sex comedy, it was quite surprising for them to go as emotional as they did, because I was a bit worried of like, I know that this will go to an emotional place. Is it going to really break the momentum? And it sort of naturally does that. And it keeps the funny up pretty much the entire way too. Like, yes, there'll be some sad scenes, but they manage to then undercut it with like a really well-placed joke. Yeah, and that comes down to Lawrence and Feldman, and then also the fact that Stupnitsky clearly knows how to write comedy. Because you said earlier, Good Boys being one of your favorite comedy. Like I rewatched that leading up to No Hard Feelings, and I was like, this movie, god damn, it's funny.
Oh, it's so good.
And it's not just because kids are saying things that kids shouldn't say. Yes, that's part of it.
It's definitely part of it, yeah.
It's really, really well written, and those kids are incredible. Like he manages to just pull out these performances from people that you might not expect. Like this is Jacob Tremblay from Room, and he's like this little kid just swearing and like with sex dolls and all that sort of crazy shit. So I think it's the same here, where we're like, we know Jennifer Lawrence is funny, but she's always been like this serious dramatic actress, or she's been like Mystique, or she's been Katniss. And it's like here, I really hope that going forward, Jennifer Lawrence starts to get more into comedy. Like it kind of reminded me like Goldie Hawn in her sort of heyday when she was, kind of like the big studio get. So yeah, I'd love to see Jennifer Lawrence continue this path, still do her serious stuff, because I was like, we need that.
We need that.
Yeah.
She's got another Oscar or two.
Yeah, I think for sure. But I want more of these sort of films for her, because it seems like she's very confident and very comfortable doing this sort of stuff.
Yes, that's it. She's confident and comfortable, and she just shines. I'm just thinking like what I'm worried about is, sorry, this is such a weird kind of mild tangent in comparison. I don't know whether it will make sense, but I think of Tom Cruise and when he shocked everyone and did Tropic Thunder, right? He's a dramatic actor. Certainly more often than not, he leans into his action genre tropes. I mean, he's about to release the 7th Mission Impossible movie, for goodness sake. Like he's been doing this for like almost 30 years, that franchise alone. But when he did Tropic Thunder, it was like, holy shit, Tom Cruise is fucking hilarious. And he went balls to the wall with that performance. And I guess you could say something similar about Jennifer Lawrence, but Tom Cruise hasn't really, unless you can fill a gap for me, he hasn't really done comedy again since. Tropic Thunder was like 2008.
Yeah, I think
nothing comes to mind.
No, like Tropic Thunder definitely, and then maybe the closest thing after that would be Night and Day.
Oh yeah, with Cameron Diaz.
As much as that was like an action movie, he leaned a bit more into comedy. Oh, and then American Made was kind of him.
Oh, see, I didn't see that one.
But nothing as crazy as Tropic Thunder. And then before that, it was like maybe something like Magnolia, where he was like the quote-unquote inspirational speaker, and he had particular use of the C word in that movie. I mean, and the thing is, though, I'd love to see Tom Cruise in comedy. If you get him as Les Grossman from Tropic Thunder again, by all means, let's go for it. Put him and Jennifer Lawrence in a movie together. Let's go.
Yeah, sign me up. I mean, there were rumors of a Les Crosman like spin-off movie or something at some point. I don't know whether that was ever true, but
No.
I kind of like that it existed and it wouldn't. I mean, this day and age, if that movie came out, you'd probably get a fucking Disney Plus original series spin-off of. I mean, Disney Plus, that's a really bad platform to have picked. You wouldn't see something like that on Disney Plus, but you know what I mean. But yeah, what I'm saying is that I just hope Jennifer Lawrence doesn't Tom Cruise us and never lean into this space again, because it's fun. It's fun to see her doing this.
Yeah, I can sort of see her maybe going like the Sandra Bullock route, where she, you know, she chooses films every few years, but they are blockbusters. You know, like she'll have her drama with like Blind Side, and you've got Lost City, which was kind of like her return to big screen sort of studio comedy, and then like Ocean's 8, things like that. So like when she chooses a film now, Sandra Bullock seems to be quite calculated. She's like, I'm choosing a film that I know audiences will respond to. And I know that Jennifer Lawrence took time off because she was like, I was oversaturating the market. So maybe now let's hope that this weekend people turn up to this movie and we get a decent enough box office that make people go, we still love Jennifer Lawrence and we still want to see comedy on the big screen, and we still want to see like R-rated comedy on the big screen. Like, give us, like, Bridesmaids just showed us what is possible. So can we just have more and stop sending everything to streaming? Oh, over it.
Let's wave that flag. I'm over it too. Oh, flips the table. Flips the table on that one. Let's talk about some of the rom-com tropes in this movie, which are really great to see play out on screen. I mean, of course, you have like the rom-com montage in there with a popular music song. They're on the beach having a good time with the vibes, playing laser tag.
Getting kicked out of laser tag.
I mean, of course, you have to have that montage piece, but I guess part of the rom-com thing is, outside of the fun, is also like those unexpected moments of poignancy. And I just want to call out a particular scene where they go to that fancy restaurant for dinner and he plays the piano at the restaurant. I mean, my goodness, I was so moved by that scene, just the performances that came out of it from him and Jennifer Lawrence as well. It was a great scene that captured a lot of development in character work. I don't know. Yeah. How did you find that scene? Because it was just beautiful.
Like, the scene starts off quite sweet because they're both sort of having their like prom moment where, you know, they're in the limousine. They're both wearing clothes that normal people wouldn't really wear. You know, she gets the corsage and all that sort of stuff. And then, they're at dinner and the banter is there at the dinner table, and then, you know, he plays the song, and also he plays like Man Eater, the Hall & Oates song, which was a nice callback to when they first heard it, and he thinks it's about actually cannibalism, and she's like, no, it's about a woman who's basically like seducing men, like, you know. And then he tells her like he learnt the song and plays the song and sings it beautifully. When that was happening, and because it goes back to Jennifer Lawrence's face, I was like, I can't read what's going to happen here, because I wasn't sure if she was angry because of what the song was implying. And I thought, okay, this is going to be the emotional turning point for the film, where she kind of, you know, realizes like what she's doing to him and how he sees her. But it then went in a different direction, and it basically was like, oh, you have genuine feelings for me, and you having feelings for me isn't good, because now I don't really want what your parents are going to give me, but you need to still go off and be your own person, which then leads into the party scene, which obviously ends with quite a great little gag of, you know, getting punched, and then her voice when she says that one line in the car. But this also brought up a really interesting thing of how, like, I guess how progressive people are now, because she obviously, as a woman in her 30s, meaning when she was in high school, she would have dealt with all of the sort of gay slurs that people just threw away as like, oh, that's so gay, meaning it's stupid. So when she says it, And she's like, oh, how about you guys, like suck each other off or whatever. And she's saying it just as like a flippant remark.
Yeah.
But because all these teenage boys now are so like sensitive, they're like, you can't be homophobic. And she's like, oh, no, I'm not homophobic. And then it's like everybody gangs up on her and is like, who's the one that said that? And I was like, it just made me think of like, God damn, kids are lucky these days. Yeah. Like queer kids are lucky these days. Like, I don't know what bullying is sort of, what's happening, but it seems like so many kids are allowed to be themselves. If they're gay at 16, they can be gay at 16. And it seems like most people are okay with it. Their peers are like, yeah, okay, that's great. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it just sort of made me think of like how much things have progressed in terms of we're now chastising characters for saying these sort of things that we grew up with, even though when we grew up with them, it was still like, it still hurt to say like that's gay and been like, well, that's kind of what I am. Yeah. But it just sort of made me realize like this film is putting in these little things, and it probably didn't, it might not be a scene that means much to a lot of people. It might go over a lot of people's heads. Sure. But it was a kind of a nice little additive to show that kids aren't all assholes, even though these kids kind of are stereotypical like douchebags where it's like the guy, the jock and all that sort of stuff. There's some sort of heart and feeling behind it, and it sort of, and then it makes her like go, no, that's not who I am. And then that also then brings into her looking at herself going, I've fucked this whole thing up and I need to now get out of it. And obviously then that leads into the parents going, you need to fix this because he's madly in love with you.
I like all those layers of flipping the script on what a high school house party is like on a piece of paper meant to be. And it goes to show, just to build on your point about how much the conversation around how we talk to and treat people in flippant social situations has developed over the years. But I also found that sequence of scenes with all that commentary around the slurs and stuff, that it almost at the same time was a commentary and a satire on the whole thing too. It was just really clever.
The fact that the parents come in and are like, who's the one that said this? And she's like, oh my God, your parents are at this house party. And they're like, you don't really think we'd let our son have a party with it? It's like, oh my God, like it's so different to what we're so used to seeing all these high school movies where parents just
they don't exist.
The amount of high school movies that have high school parties and the parents are just never there. And you're like, not every parent leaves to let their kids have a party. Like, it's kind of bizarre. But I did like that it was basically showing like this is probably what would actually happen. Yeah. Parents would probably be at home. They might say, hey, we're going to step away. But most parents would be at their home.
But my dad wouldn't let me go to someone's house unless he had met the parents. That was like his rule. And we're talking, I guess high school period where it's harder to like meet the parents because it's not school pickup in the playground in primary school, like everyone knows everyone anyway. But in the early noughties it's like, oh, but I don't know the parents, and you just have to connect them and whatever, and then you'd be able to stay over or whatever.
You'd have to ring them on their home telephone, and you'd have to get like the parents' number, and I know I remember like having to like ring the person's house and been like, hi, Mrs. Such and Such, it's Peter Gray calling, is such and such there? And it's like nowadays you don't remember numbers now. Like it's crazy how your parents would be like, well, I need to know whose house you're at and I'm picking you up at this time. And now you're like, kids today would be like, I'll get an Uber there. And you're like, you shouldn't have a phone to have an Uber. It's ridiculous.
Did you really just say kids today?
Kids today. I said it. Dear. I said it because I'm
old.
pushing. I'm pushing it. Yeah.
I know. I shouldn't give you shit because Nick Labarro gives you shit about the whole, the age gap between you two on your podcast. So.
That's all right. But then at the same, I give it right back to him. I mean, like, you know what? I was like, man, when you were in diapers, I was able to buy beer.
I'm sure he's making up for that now. Not quite though, but close. So one really not trivial thing, but just something that really upset me about the movie was Matthew Broderick's hair. Like, I just found it really just gross.
It was a bit cult leadery.
It was. Shit.
I think that worked because his name was
Laird.
And that was great. Laird?
Laird like a lasagna? No, Laird.
No,
You can
just
call me
Laird. Okay. Laird. And also, like, the fact that Matthew Broderick and Laura Benanti, they both, I could be wrong, I feel like they were always dressed in white.
Yeah, actually.
As well. It did actually feel very culty now that I'm thinking about it.
I mean, is that Matthew Broderick's actual hair? Like, I don't want to...
Surely.
Or is it a character choice? Like, it's a wig, right?
It's got to be. I'd like to think it's a character. I'm pretty sure I saw photos of him at the premiere and he looked remarkably different. I'm like, you look like Matthew Broderick that we
know and love.
We know. Yeah. I'm sure it was a character choice and it was a bizarre one. But I also think maybe he saw that his character's name was Laird and was like, if I'm a Laird, I have this hair. Like,
when he was getting his costume fitting, like, oh, there's something missing here.
There's something missing.
I want a greasy, long hair, cult-like leader vibes. Can we make that happen?
I think it also, like, it definitely made him look older as well.
Yeah, it did.
Which probably helped the fact that they were kind of old school parents in a lot of ways, the way that they treated their kid and stuff, not being like younger parents who would probably be a lot more like free and like let their kid do whatever they want. So I think that let's just go with it was a character choice because he looked old as fuck and he's not that old looking.
We're here to defend Matthew Broderick.
At least not at the premiere. He looks like Matthew Broderick that we've known from the years gone by.
Years gone, from Inspector Gadget all the way through.
Oh, God.
What a weird choice. Why did I pick that movie? That's bizarre.
I was like, Ferris Bueller was right there, and you were like, nah, Inspector
Gadget.
And then I'm having trouble thinking of any other movie apart from Stepford Wives.
Godzilla?
All right. Yeah. Wow, he's chosen some interesting movies, hasn't he?
Chosen, but he's chosen well here. And
yes, he has
chosen an interesting wig to go with it. Let's just say. Okay, enough on Matthew Broderick's hair. God's sake. Is there anything else you want to talk about this movie from a character or story perspective that you loved, or sort of any commentary around it, or should we give our wrap up and rate this bad boy?
The character that played by Natalie Morales.
Yes.
I loved her dynamic with Jennifer Lawrence, how they were like, clearly they'd been friends for a very long time. There was almost like a shorthand that they had. They were giving each other shit. Like when she brings out the very awfully made baby.
The mobile? Yeah.
The mobile. And Natalie Morales is just like, there was no even pretending it was great. And Jennifer Lawrence is thinking it's like, isn't it awesome? It lights up. And they're like, oh, don't tell me it gets better by it lights up. Like, they were a smaller part of the film, but they bumped up all the scenes in between her whenever she was away from Percy. Yeah, I've just thought she had some really great little quips, especially towards the beginning when they're like, go back to the ocean. Because he's like, why don't you, they're just like, go back into the ocean. Because that's like, he's offering about the Craigslist and all that sort of stuff, which is a more bigger thing in America than it is in Australia.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, Craigslist has some very
just odd
fucked
things.
up shit on there.
Just like you can list anything, like putting your 19-year-old son up for sexy time.
Yeah.
So he's better equipped for college. I mean, verbatim the ad.
Which makes perfect sense. Yeah.
It's ripe for picking in comedy. That's
for sure. If only I had that when I was 19. Oh.
If you could go back, would you?
Actually, probably. I probably would go back. I wouldn't go back to have sex with Jennifer Lawrence because reasons.
Because reasons.
But I think I would like to go back. I'd shake my teen self and be like, it's gonna be okay.
Totally, I'm with you. Before we get too deep on our teenage lives, there, what we would go back to change about us, that's for another conversation. Do you want to share your wrap up and your rating out of 5 popcorn kernels, my friend?
So I know, like, this film, it doesn't reinvent the wheel in any way, but it's basically like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. It knows what it's doing. It plays to the rules of its genre, but it manages to sort of color outside the lines where it can. Yeah. So this film, like, it's not groundbreaking in any way. It's not going to change the face of the genre, but it's consistently funny, which a lot of comedies aren't. It's really sweet. It never feels like it's overstaying its welcome. And it's just another great reminder of the power that is Jennifer Lawrence and her humor. I really, really had a good time with this. I'm giving it 4 out of 5. It just made me laugh and made me smile. And right now, sometimes that's all you need.
Couldn't agree more. Well, No Hard Feelings is a really refreshing comedy with equal parts heart and humour like we've discussed. I was so invested in these characters, and despite the formula of the film not diverting too far from the familiar, it was handled so well from a writing and direction perspective that it just worked and felt fresh and fucking hilarious. The real reason to see this film, though, is Jennifer Lawrence and Andrew Barth Feldman, who deliver such endearing and cohesive performances as a pair. They are what elevate this one to join other such comedy classics of the 2000s, or what are we? Are we the 20s again? What do we say?
Yeah, I guess the 2020. I guess so. Oh God, we could probably be considered the 20s,
The roaring 20s.
Oh, it's really, and you know what? Also, it's like it's crazy how 30 years is the 90s. Like we're just in this weird thing now where like movies that go back can go back to 2000. Like we're saying this movie is a throwback to the movies from the 2000s. Like, oh, that is
Jesus
not fair. So I'm still going to say it's a throwback to movies from the 80s because that makes me feel good.
Okay, good. Whatever you need to do. Well, I'm also going to rate No Hard Feelings 4 popcorn kernels out of 5. And No Hard Feelings is in Australian cinemas from June 22. And that is it for another episode of Popcorn Pals. I was joined by Rotten Tomatoes certified film critic Peter Gray. Pete, where can people find you out on the internets and follow your work?
Oh, they want to find me on all of the internets and all the things that the internet can give you. I'm rated PDG on Twitter and Instagram. And if you want to look for my reviews, they're mainly on a site, the AU Review, where I talk a lot about movies and talk to some really great people too. So yeah,
like me on Popcorn Pals. I'm one of those great peoples.
Very much so, yes.
Thank you. I was waiting for the validation. I appreciate that. Well, I've loved talking to you about this movie, mate. We're the Jennifer Lawrence Appreciation Podcast now. And as always, thanks so much for listening, and we'll catch you next time. We are now on YouTube, where you will find our latest celebrity video interviews. Simply search Popcorn Podcast with Leigh and Tim and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss a thing.